I really liked the fact that the script was more of an adult animation theme and had really a lot of conceptual value and intelligence behind it, because I think a lot of times animation in the United States is basically for children, or if it's for adults, it's fairly crude. So the scope of puppets kind of increased as the time went on. We changed a lot of things throughout the process. So you start with wanting to have enough puppets for the stages, and then you add more stages. Therefore, you have to make more puppets. So we started with probably 10 Michaels. We ended up having 20 of the main character. Extras were another thing that we thought we only needed, maybe 50. We ended up more towards 120 extras in the end, just because scheduling and trying to get the movie done. So we're breaking it off into different sets and duplicating certain characters like Dennis the bellboy. There were a couple of Bella as well. We had a couple, and you just kind of had to increase the amounts with the amount of stages. Well, first the actors were chosen that we were modeling the characters of, and then a sculptor was hired that physically sculpted the bodies and the heads of the characters, and those were brought into a 3D modeling program, and then those were 3D printed, sanded and prepped, and then we made molds of those. So that would be the molding and casting department. And then we had armature makers. They made armatures for those puppets, which is like the inner skeleton that keeps them in position and able to walk and move on their own. And then they were cast in silicone, and we had a whole team of people who seamed the silicone and painted the silicone. And then we had 3D printed faces and heads. And then we had a hair person who did all the hair for all the puppets. And then after the bodies were done, the bodies would go to costumes, and they were patterned and individual costumes made for each puppet. And also eyeballs. Eyeballs were very important. We had tons of eyeballs because they get damaged. So someone actually hand painted those for probably a couple weeks. He sat there painting eyes the entire time. Well, we had to do a lot of R&D to get the right eye light, the proper reflection that Charlie and Duke wanted to keep them looking pretty human. So that was a lot of research to figure out how to do that and get the right enamel, and figure out how not to get bubbles in it. And then Michael actually has green eyes, or hazelish eyes, and Lisa has brown eyes, but the rest of the world, all the world characters, have blue eyes. So we had different sets for each character. For the armatures, we started with wire armatures, and then realized with the wire armature, you don't get as sharp and defined of bends as you would with a ball and socket armature. So we started researching ball and socket armatures for the main characters. So they could have a better, more realistic, like knee bends and elbow bends and different things. And then most importantly for the sex scene, we needed full ball and socket armatures so they could do all the things that they needed to do in that shot and still look realistic, where costumes couldn't hide anything that was a problem. So we did a lot of R&D and figured out the best armatures for that. We also implemented hybrid armatures, so we had wire in certain parts and ball and socket for the elbows, knees, ankles, and foot plates. So the faces were all brought into ZBrush, and then they were manipulated in the different mouth shapes and the different percentages. So each mouth would have a different phenome on it, and then also a different percentage. So 25% would be a quarter of the way open, up to 100, and we even got to extremes of like 125%. For example, when Lisa was singing and different things like that, we had specialty mouth sets for that. And then world characters were an average of a lot of people that worked at Starburns and were kind of made into a generic face. We had less facial expressions for them because they were kind of less important than Michael and Lisa, and also kind of we wanted them to be a little less noticeable than Michael and Lisa, a little less distinct. This scale, about 12-inch 1/6 scale, is pretty standard for wanting a little bit more detail in stop motion while still having manageable set sizes. So if you go too much bigger, you really have giant sets, and we wouldn't have been able to fit all of it into Starburns. So, but it gave us enough detail and things like that. But you can go smaller, and you lose the ability to put nuances into your animation and your puppets. It takes a full week to seam and paint one of the nude puppets, just the body. Hair for a Michael head could be done in a couple days. So, cumulatively, at least a week for a main character.